Hello, and thank you for joining us on the Business Finance Expert Network. I'm Jack Sweeney, and we're pleased to bring you another research bulletin where we explore survey findings of interest to finance executives. With this research bulletin, we'll explore IBM's 2008 Global CFO Study. Now, Michael Schreck, Global in America's Business Intelligence Leader for IBM Business Consulting Services, recently sat down with us to discuss the findings, and you'll be viewing that discussion in just about 60 seconds. But first, we thought we'd explore some of the new findings with you. Here's what IBM found out as far as what's important to the CFO. Now, here are the four most highly ranked items on the CFO agenda: measuring, monitoring business performance, meeting fiduciary and statutory requirements, continuous process improvement and business improvement, and developing people. Next, here's something interesting. The two agenda items ranking lowest in importance are supporting, managing, mitigating enterprise risk, and driving integration of information across the enterprise. Now, IBM was quick to point out that these were key differentiators of financially successful companies. So here now is our interview with Michael Schreck. So Mike, what were some of the surprises that the data revealed this year?
Yeah, one of the interesting things we noted is we kind of looked at not only the priorities, but also what were a few of the key differentiators relative to what some of the more progressive CFOs and organizations were doing through the CFO, which also related to their success as a company. And we evaluated success as a company based on their revenue and stock share price growth over the last 5 years. And those two that really stood out were, number one, the ability to do an effective job of planning, measuring, and monitoring enterprise risk management. And it was interesting to note in that area that 62% of the companies over $5 billion in revenue experienced some type of risk management situation over the last 3 years that impacted their financial results. Unfortunately, only 42% of those companies were able to effectively address that risk. And about 87% of that risk wasn't financial risk. It was risk like environmental, operational, geopolitical, and legal risk. So it's not the type of risk that a CFO might think about. The second key finding that kind of separated the successful from the not so successful companies was the ability to integrate and disseminate information more broadly across the global enterprise. And those CFOs and organizations who were doing that effectively, it really stood out as being a key differentiator between, again, those companies that were successful and those that were not so successful.
Mike, you mentioned managing risk and the concerns that CFOs have about doing a better job managing risk. But are the BPM technologies and applications currently being used, are they well suited to help the CFO in the area?
Yeah, one of the things that we're seeing, Jack, is that the CFOs are starting to understand that they need to play a larger role in helping and enabling risk management activities throughout their organization. And by that, it's very similar to some of the key concepts we've talked about relative to business performance management, like being able to include it in your planning, budgeting, and strategy setting, and then being able to do a more effective job of identifying key risk measures and then measure and monitoring those on an ongoing basis. What we're seeing some of the more progressive companies doing is actually incorporating those key risk measures along with their key performance measures as part of an overarching business performance management infrastructure and process.
If I'm a CFO and I am concerned that my information isn't being disseminated across my enterprise, are there strategies or approaches or technologies that can help me? What's the plan here?
Yeah,
what can help me do
I think
this?
one of the challenges, Jack, is that organizations have moved from being initially domestic to multinational, which means they have operations in a few countries, to being international, where now I'm covering much of the world, to what we talk about in the survey as being globally integrated enterprises. And when we talk about that, and we talk about that relative to information integration and dissemination, what we really mean is that organizations are looking at how they can do a more effective job of standardizing not only the data and the information around concepts like one version of the truth and some of the core BPM principles, and also master data management is becoming a more important part of these solutions. But it also includes being able to standardize the people, process, organizations. So one of the things the survey talks about is the globally integrated finance organization. And then lastly, the tools and technologies. And organizations are getting, again, very focused on how can we standardize on a suite of business performance management tools and technologies that we can deploy consistently around the world.
So what do you see yourself, Michael, out there? What are organizations doing new and differently as far as their BPM approaches are concerned?
Yeah, so one of the key areas that we're seeing companies focus on right now in the area of business performance management, and that's around a concept that we have coined the term operational intelligence. And what that means is taking the basic tenets of BPM around planning, budgeting, and forecasting, being able to integrate information, being able to capture key performance indicators across your entire value chain, which right now in many organizations still principally sits at the executive suite. But now organizations are getting very focused on taking that key performance indicators, again, the data, the people, process, organization, the tools and technologies, and cascading it down through the lines of business, through the departments, through the functions, to be able to align that information much more closely with the underlying business processes. The other kind of dynamics that we're seeing in the marketplace right now that feed into that is we really see operational intelligence as being the convergence of SOA, tools and technologies, because we think in order to be successful in supporting a globally integrated enterprise with these BPM concepts, they need to be web-enabled. Around business process transformation, again, another high priority identified by the CFOs, also in our recent CEO study, as organizations look to driving cost and improving productivity throughout their organizations. They're very focused on business process transformation. And we believe that through BPM and business intelligence, that we, the BPM business intelligence market, need to be able to deliver the information and the analytics that support business process transformation and take advantage of that SOA technology. So as we look at the future of BPM, we really see those BPM concepts getting driven down into much lower levels of organizations.
You know, there's no question one of the things the survey revealed was a pretty sizable gap between CFOs saying how important people development is and how effective they're being at developing their people. Why is that, and what are CFOs, what should they be doing?
Yeah, that's right, Jack, and I actually was very encouraged to see that that was identified. Developing our people is the fourth highest priority for CFOs. So it's really near the top of the list of all the criteria we've asked them to respond to. And you're right, yeah, there's a big gap. You know, why is that? And I think the reason that there's a gap is I think that demands and the skills required to be an effective finance professional today is changing. And I think as we look forward, these financial professionals are going to spend less time chasing numbers, entering information into spreadsheets, entering journal entry. A lot of that is going to be automated. And so I think we're going to be very successful, and we're seeing in some leading companies today, of allowing those professionals to spend more time doing what we want them to do, what they enjoy doing, and that is analyzing the information, really understanding how that information relates to the business, and providing tremendous value. And therefore, so when you look at the skills that are going to be required, it's not just accounting skills in knowing debits and credits and basic accounting. It's going to be, do I understand the business? Do I have the technology skills? Do I have the analytical skills? So organizations are going to be looking to develop within finance much more rounded professionals who, again, can respond to the need to be able to analyze and provide not only traditional financial information externally to meet the statutory, regulatory, and auditing requirements, but the real value is how can we turn that around and leverage information to help our organizations across, again, the globally integrated enterprise be more successful.
Michael Schreck, thank you for being with us.
It's my pleasure.